Hi, welcome back to Small Bites. I'm Monique Champagne, LPC therapist, here with The Gracious Mind, and we're back for another Small Bites topic. Today we're talking about motivation and behavioral activation. Our hope with these Small Bite series is that you are able to take in some tips and tricks that we offer from the mental health field to take into your daily life. As usual, we'd love to hear from you about some different topics that you'd like to hear us talk about. So we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on Wednesday at 12 Central Standard Time for our Instagram live version of Small Bites, where we get to interact with you, answer your questions, and see what you think about these different topics. If you're watching this video after our live Instagram chat, feel free to go back and look through our Instagram feed. All of our previous Small Bites lives have been put up on there. Here we are, it's springtime, we're coming into the warmer weather, days with more light, and we're coming out of a season where we've taken time to conserve a lot of energy. The days were dark during the winter, it got really, really cold, and so as usual, we kind of are conserving our energy. We're usually spending our time being restful, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so we've found ourselves being more isolated than we used to. So sometimes as we're coming out of these winter months, we found ourselves developing patterns and behaviors that are ready to be shifted. Spring is a time of shifting, of transition, of renewal. And when we think about springtime, something that comes up for me is thinking about different animals and how they come out of their hibernation period. For example, what we know about bears are that they don't quickly wake up when it's spring and get moving. They normally take some time to shift into energy gear and to come out of their slumber. Let's compare that with the experience of bees. As the spring months come and they're ready to come out of their hibernation, they don't take a while to jump into gear. They right away will go out into the world and spread their shit quite literally that they've been saving up from the winter and are able to start afresh. So as humans, we slow down in the winter, which makes sense. It's cold, we're conserving energy, and it can be hard to make that shift into the new season. So today I'm going to talk about behavior activation, specifically motivation, behavioral activation, and then I'm going to give you some tips at the end on how to increase some behaviors without having to rely on the feeling of motivation. The first thing I want to say about motivation is it's okay to not feel motivated. In fact, it makes sense. We've been still, we've been isolated, and it can be really hard to start a new behavior, especially if we don't feel like it. I do want to emphasize that there's this myth out there that we have to have this motivation, this some sort of activation that naturally comes up before we can do something. And I'm here to tell you that we don't have to wait for the mood to strike to be able to activate new behaviors in our lives. As you're watching this video, I want you to consider what it would be like to just do something without waiting for the motivation to do it. On the topic of motivation, there are so many ways to describe motivation. We can look at it in terms of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, things that we want to do just because they feel good, and things that we do because of external expectations. We can also talk about motivation in terms of instinct, biological drives. And this is things that like having the motivation to eat something because we're hungry, having the motivation to sleep because we're tired, and feeling motivated to connect with others. So basically, motivation is a combination of mental, emotional, biological, social, and cognitive forces that pushes us to do a thing. There's a theory in the psychology world called motivational interviewing. And if you're seeing a motivational therapist, likely they are going to sit with your feelings non-judgmentally. You may know that you're ready to make a change or do a thing, but maybe aren't quite ready. And a motivational interviewing therapist is going to sit there and listen and encourage you to understand and explore those feelings, that lack of motivation, again, non-judgmentally. So I want to encourage you to take these next 4 ideas and consider how they affect your personal experience of motivation. First, I want you to consider your level of ambivalence. How much motivation do you currently have to change anything that's happening in your life? Again, there's no right or wrong, just something to consider. Another thing to think about is your level of confidence. How confident are you in actually completing these behaviors? And this could be drinking more. This could be going outside into the world, maybe not staying at home so much. How much confidence do you have that you will be successful in doing those things? Another thing to consider are your desires. What would you hope to gain? What might you feel if you were able to activate these behaviors and kind of do more things in your life? If you've been journaling along with us, be sure to take some time to explore these topics. The last thing I want you to consider regarding motivational interviewing is how important is it for you to do this thing, to go meet with friends, to go out into the world rather than staying home alone? How important is it? Once you've analyzed these things and have really given them space, non-judgmentally, you're allowing these feelings and thoughts to come up, then I want you to think about what you might do differently. What might you like to change? What might you feel if you were able to change some of those behaviors? So we've talked about the idea of motivation and all the different ways that we can think about motivation. And we also know that you don't have to feel motivated in order to do the thing. So next, we're going to talk about behavioral activation. Research has shown that behavioral activation is a really good way to help us boost our mood. We don't have to wait for the mood to come up in order for us to start trying new things. In fact, the first thing I want you to do is just observe. Observe your life, observe your behaviors, take note of your daily activities, and then set small, reasonable, measurable goals, and then just do it. And once you've done the thing, be sure to reward yourself. And then, like good scientists, we're going to go back and we're going to see how we felt after doing the thing. We're going to measure it, and then we're going to adjust as needed. Yay, science. Another thing that's important in behavioral activation is to keep yourself accountable. So whether this is to keep a log, or to tell a friend, or to tell your therapist, be sure you've got someone or something that's helping to keep you accountable for trying these new things out. And as promised, I'm going to give you some tips and ideas on how to increase behavioral activation in your own life. I want to emphasize that when you're feeling depressed or anxious as we're coming out of the winter months, it can be really hard to think of things to do. So I'm going to provide you with a basic list of things that you may want to consider first monitoring and observing, and then seeing if you want to make any changes. So consider how much physical movement you get. Also consider how much water you're drinking. How much sleep are you getting? Are these areas that you would like to improve or change in? Consider how you're connecting with others. Would you like to do more of that? During COVID, I know a lot of people have told me that they're having a hard time doing some of those daily activities. Brushing their teeth every day. How often are you showering? Are these little behavioral things that you can include in your life, increase frequency of? Are you okay with where you're at in each of these areas? Are these things that you want to improve in your life? Again, just observe those behaviors and see if there's anything you want to change. So those are some of the basic behaviors, kind of basic hygiene, taking care of ourselves. Some other things that you may want to consider are pleasurable activities, things that bring you joy. So when I'm working with clients, I'll often tell them it's really helpful if you create a joy list. So days that you need self-care and it's hard to think about what you could do that would bring some happiness or some joy into your life, you can start to develop a list of things to go to when you're not able to think of what to do next. To add some more detail to your joy list, you may want to chart some various things. You may want to consider the financial cost of doing those things. Getting your daily coffee, weekly coffee, if it's maybe it's a treat for you. How much does that cost? How much time does it take to do that? What kind of resources are you going to need to be able to do that activity? This way, when you're feeling depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, again, you've got a list of activities to go to. You've got ideas of how much time you have right now to spend on that thing, and then how much maybe financial resources you have to be able to engage in these pleasurable, joyful activities. I want to emphasize when you're doing a joy list or you're trying to activate these behaviors, be sure that you're creating measurable, reasonable goals. So for example, if your goal coming into the spring is to get organized, you're going to fail. That's a huge task. Let's break it down into smaller tasks. And then that way you'll feel intrinsically rewarded when you've done those things. So that may look like, I'll clean up the dishes twice a week. That may look like, I'll do laundry on Thursdays. That may look like, I'll reach out to 2 people this week. Or maybe I'll set up a donation pile in the back of my closet so that when I'm ready, I can take those to Goodwill. In summary, it can be helpful to keep a log of your current daily activities and to create a joy list or a pleasurable activities list. I really want to encourage you to do these activities with no judgment. To be mindful of maybe the hesitations that you have without critiquing yourself. Remember, we're all coming out of these winter months. We are still in a pandemic, and so we're all doing the best that we can. Create short, measurable goals, and don't forget to reward yourself. Be sure that you take it slow. Just try one new thing at a time. So now that you've learned a little bit about behavioral activation, about motivation and why it's overrated. We hope that you found this video really helpful and you may be interested in sharing it with a friend, with a family member, and you guys can continue to talk about this a little bit more. Be sure to join us next time for Small Bites. You can find us here on YouTube and also every Wednesday at 12 Central Standard Time on Instagram Live, where we get to talk about some thoughts that you have about the ideas of motivation and all the different topics we've been discussing here on Small Bites. We really appreciate all of you who've been able to share, like, and subscribe to our work. That really does a lot to support our ability to provide low-cost mental health services to community members in need. We hope that you've gained a lot of information from today's YouTube topic. We look forward to seeing you next time.